All right, welcome everyone. Today, we're going to trace a single, really powerful idea all the way from the absolute simplest forms of life right up to, well, the incredibly complex story of us. And believe it or not, our whole journey kicks off with a question that seems almost too simple.
So here it is. You've seen this a million times, right? That plant on your windowsill just leaning, stretching, almost like it's reaching for the sunlight. It's so common we barely think about it. But the answer to why it does that? Well, that simple answer unlocks one of the biggest, most fundamental truths about, well, everything that's alive.
Okay, so let's start small. To really get what's happening with that plant, we've got to look at how life responds right here, right now, within the lifetime of just one single organism. And this right here is the core truth. It's like a fundamental rule for everything, from a tiny bacterium to a massive blue whale. When the world throws something at it, a challenge, an opportunity, whatever, life doesn't just sit there. It does something. It adapts. It reacts. It responds.
So, back to our plant. What it's doing is called tropism. And let's be clear, the plant isn't thinking about it. It's not a choice. It's a completely built-in, automatic reaction, a growth movement that's triggered by something in its environment. And in this case, that something is light.
But wait, how does a plant see light if it doesn't have eyes? Well, the secret is this hormone called auxin. It's made right at the very tip of the stem. Now here's the brilliant part. Sunlight actually destroys auxin. So think about it. The side of the stem that's in the shade always has more of this hormone. And more auxin means faster growth. So the shady side literally grows faster than the sunny side. And that's what physically pushes the stem and makes it bend toward the light. This whole response is called phototropism. And it's just a simple, elegant little survival hack.
Okay, so that's how one single plant responds during its life, but what happens when we zoom out? What about an entire species? How does a whole population change and respond over, say, millions of years? Now that question takes us right into the middle of one of the biggest debates in the history of science.
And it all comes down to this classic question. You probably heard it before. How did giraffes get those incredibly long necks? It's the perfect case study to look at two totally different ideas about how species change. So first up, we have Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. And his theory, it sounds pretty intuitive. He pictured these ancient giraffes with short necks, right? And they're always stretching, always reaching for those higher leaves. He thought that all that stretching actually made their necks a little bit longer during their own lives. And here's the key part. He believed they could then pass that newly stretched, longer neck onto their babies.
But there's a huge problem with that, right? Think about it. If you go to the gym for years and get super muscular, your kids aren't born with those muscles. It just doesn't work that way. There was zero evidence that characteristics you acquire during your life can be passed down. So even though it was a neat idea, Lamarck's theory just didn't hold up.
And that brings us to the real game changer. The guy who finally cracked the code with an idea that was as revolutionary as it was powerful. Charles Darwin.
See, Darwin came at it from a totally different angle. He started with a simple observation. In any group of giraffes, there's variation. It's just natural. Some are born with slightly longer necks, some with slightly shorter ones. Now, imagine food is scarce and the best leaves are high up. Suddenly, that tiny difference is a huge deal. The giraffes that just happen to be born with longer necks can eat better, stay healthier, and are more likely to survive and have kids. And what do they pass on to those kids? The genes for a longer neck. Generation after generation, this process repeats, and the average neck length of the whole population gets longer. See the crucial difference? The stretching didn't cause the long necks. The advantage was already there in the population, and the environment just selected the winners.
And that powerful process is, of course, natural selection. It's the engine driving evolution. It's simple, really. Organisms that have traits that give them an edge in their environment are just more likely to survive and reproduce. They pass on those winning traits. It's such a simple idea, but it has the power to explain literally all of the breathtaking diversity of life we see on Earth.
Okay, so now let's turn that powerful lens onto what might be the most fascinating story of all, our own. How did this process of natural selection shape us, the human species? Well, scientists are kind of like detectives, piecing together our story from the clues left behind in fossils. And when you compare a modern human skull to that of an African ape, the differences just jump out at you. Our cranium, the part that holds the brain, is way bigger. Our brow ridges are smaller. But one of the most important clues is a hole at the base of the skull, called the foramen magnum. That's where the spine connects. In an ape, it's positioned toward the back, which is great for an animal that walks on all fours. But in us, it's moved right underneath the skull. Why? Because that perfectly balances our head for walking upright on two legs. A tiny change with huge consequences.
And when you line up all these fossil finds on a timeline, one trend just screams at you: the incredible explosive growth of the brain. I mean, look at this. Over 5 million years, our ancestors' brain size more than quadrupled. That's not a minor tweak. That is a massive, radical transformation. It was like evolution decided to go all in on brain power. So how do scientists visualize all these relationships? They use something called a phylogenetic tree. The easiest way to think about it is just as a giant family tree for different species. And the rule is super simple. The closer two branches are on the tree, the more closely related those species are.
And that family tree shows us something really important: who our closest living relatives are. As you can see here, of all the great apes alive today, chimpanzees are our #1 closest relative. We share an incredible amount of our DNA with them. Now, this is a really important point. We did not evolve from chimpanzees. What it means is that we both evolved from the same common ancestor that lived millions and millions of years ago.
So, where did this whole human story begin? Well, the fossil record gives us a pretty clear answer. The oldest fossils we have of hominids, that is, our ancestors who walked upright on two legs, have all been found in Africa. This evidence is the cornerstone of what scientists call the out-of-Africa hypothesis. The idea is that our species, Homo sapiens, first emerged in Africa and then spread out to populate the rest of the world.
And that brings us full circle, back to our big idea. We've seen that evolution is just life's ongoing response to a changing world, from a simple plant leaning towards a window all the way to the incredible expansion of the human brain. Well, our world today is changing faster than ever before in history. So it leaves us with one last big question. How are we responding now? What does the next chapter of human evolution even look like?